You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Supplemental. Season 2, with the Hageman Brothers.
Welcome to Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Marina Kravchuk.
And I am Charlene Schmidt.
Usually on this show, we examine an episode of Star Trek Prodigy and give it the old mission log treatment, where we find morals, meanings, and messages, and find out what we learned. But today, that's not what we're going to do, because we have two very special guests with us.
That's right. It's our honor and pleasure to welcome the creators of Star Trek Prodigy, Mr. Dan and Kevin Hageman. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having us back. We're so happy to talk Star Trek.
Oh,
I love it. I'm ready.
We are ready too. We have been looking forward to this pretty much all season, but we wanted to save some of the very best for the very last parts of our season 2 coverage. And now here we are. And it's so good to see you. It's been a very long time since you've been on the show. And so it's wonderful to have you back. And boy, do we have some questions for you. Season 2, a lot was going on, and I would just love to dive right into this whole idea that you knew going into season 2, you were going to have time travel shenanigans. Like, you set yourselves up for that. And we asked Aaron this question a while back during our mid-season break. He was like, yeah, bring it on. I'm all about the time travel stuff. Well, how did you guys feel about that going in?
Well, we had to spin off on it.
Yeah. I'm surprised Aaron went all gusto about it. I remember us being so scared of all the time travel. And you have to do Star Trek time travel, which has to be...
And a time travel season. It's not just an episode. We're talking about, it's got to all work.
Yeah, so, okay, he was saying, oh, yeah, bring it. And you guys are just like, oh, God, what have we done?
Yeah, don't...
Dad will do some time travel stuff on some of our other shows, and there's always fans who are like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. We're like, oh my gosh, it's going to be this times 100, so...
Yeah, so honestly, I think a few years ago, Dan and I actually swore we will never do time travel again. And then we found ourselves here doing a whole season of it. And we were, and you're worried because we love season 1 so much, and we love the ending to season 1. And I was so worried that season 2 would just become a giant convoluted mess. I really wanted season 2 to hold up to season 1.
Yeah. Well, as they say never in Star Trek. But it's just out of curiosity, knowing that this had potential to be a convoluted, timey-wimey stuff, was there ever... I don't know, some kind of a plan B, a backup idea on how we're going to get Chakotay back. And then, I don't know.
Kevin's early on had this idea of we'll figure out the time travel stuff in 2 episodes so we can open ourselves up to other new stuff. I go, no, Kevin, it has to be the whole thing. It's so complex that it needs to be the whole 20 episodes. He's like, oh, you're right. He's like...
He was right. He was right. I was just trying to get over it so that we weren't, in truth, when you do look closely at season 2, we had a little less freedom to go do, those one-off episodes or concept episodes. We found ourselves, especially in the last 5, okay, it's all, we got to conclude this story.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was incredibly well crafted, and we had a very good time watching the entirety of it. You did very good.
Basically, during the watch, we were just messaging each other, can you believe it? Where this is leading. We were watching the...
during the initial binge.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was mind-blowing. Trying to take all of that in the span that we did, which was really fast, just consecutive within 48 hours. That was a lot. It was really good to go back and dissect everything week by week to find all the things that we couldn't possibly get in the first round, just because there's so much.
It helps that, I think when we blocked it out and we showed Dr. Aaron, we're like, we think this works time travel wise. And we never ever had any moment of like, no, that doesn't work. We have to rejigger this. We have to figure out something else. I think we always just kind of followed our instincts and like our own movie time travel logic. And it worked out. And we were so thankful that we didn't have any major hiccups. We did have like Nickelodeon was always like, okay, how is a 7-year-old going to understand this? And we're like, don't worry about that. We're just like, just let it be above their head and they'll figure it out when they're older, you know?
You actually answered a question that I had, how, was it ever a moment when you're breaking down the story? It was like, okay, back up. We need to do something else. Was there like finally sort of a final moment where it's like, okay, we got it? Or did you continue sort of still working through as the production actually started?
I mean, there's a lot of times when you think you have it worked out and you don't have any time to double back. You're just like, this is what it has to be. I remember the only trepidation I had, Kevin, was in the back 5 episodes where it was just very Essentia heavy. And I'm like, this is like a space battle part 1, space battle part 2. Then they got to go to the planet. Then they got to go off the planet. Then they got to go onto the planet. And then there's the big finale. I was like, this might not work. But what was nice was I felt like we built up enough tension in a big enough story that it did sustain,
Oh, yeah. No, it did come together. I know you guys listen to the podcast, and that's so awesome. But also, you probably heard us saying many times over, okay, where's Essentia? When is it going to come back up again? Because it inevitably will. And she did. Yeah. She roared back.
Yeah, for like 5 straight episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jamil, we always talk like Kevin and I are always like, Jamil is amazing as Essentia. Yeah. Like,
so good
as a person and as an actress. She delivers.
Yeah, I wish like so much of our stuff was done during COVID, so we don't have any video footage of it. And I wish you could see us recording with her because she is hysterical. She is one of the funniest women I've ever met, and she did such an amazing job as a villain. But she's like a total joy of a person to work with.
Oh, that's so cool to hear. I got to be honest, I don't know a whole lot about her as a person. So now I'm going to have to check out her other work at the very least. Well, and speaking of personalities, I mean, the whole cast turns in incredible performances. Angus Imrie really gets some great stuff for Zero, and Ella Purnell is just absolutely killing it with Gwen and all the challenges she faces throughout the whole season. I would like to know if there's any character that is most like you in terms of personality or in how you think. Like, are you a Dal? Are you a Gwen? Are you a Roddenberry?
Here's what I want. I want to label Dan, and I want Dan to label me. Because Dan is Jankum Pog. Dan is a contrarian. Every time you say something, he goes the other way. Nope. Can't be that. Nope. Argue.
Kev's probably more Dal. I think that we have a combination. Yeah, I feel like big picture. I think Kevin and I are real big Dals in the world of Star Trek. We're like, let's fake it till we make it. We're the captains. We know what we're doing, but we're honest enough to know we didn't know what we were doing. We needed, Aaron Walke at comms. We needed the Benson sisters, helping us out. We needed a lot of help, and we kind of knew the direction of where we wanted to go. We kind of knew what the North Star. I think the biggest thing that Kevin and I think guided was just the emotional depth. I would say of what the show was. The character growth and things like that. Not to say everyone was doing that, but I think that's the stuff that drives us.
There's almost no IP like this, because when you get a writer's room together, it's not just, hey, we're all fans of Star Trek. It's like, Aaron Walke will really specifically grew up on Next Generation. I was in college at the time. I never watched Next Generation. I was all about Kirk and Spock and all about the films and all about the original series, right? So we were all good at different, there's so much. So it's so great to have.
Let's take it. That's very cool. So if we're doing making the band Prodigy style, okay, you're both Dal. Aaron is Gwen.
Who's Gwen?
between us or
We're talking like the whole writer's room now at this point. So the Bensons are Dr. Aaron is Rob talk. That's kind of a given.
This could be Gwen, not to have any gender related issues, but I would say like, well,
they had a lot of really. I was going to say the Benson sisters had a lot of great contributions with Essentia. Having a strong female villain.
I think the best sisters are Essentia and Gwen wrapped together.
So the Ravana
Around the time. Yes.
Nice. Were there any legacy characters that you wanted on Prodigy, but like either you like it didn't work out or you didn't get there, the actors were not available, things fell apart? Anything like that?
No. Nothing major.
That's pretty cool. So you got everybody that you wanted.
I think so. Pretty much. I think so.
Yeah, there was maybe a small moment in Kobayashi, but that wasn't.
Yeah.
That was, but we never had any major difficulties. There was a moment I know going into season 2 that it wasn't going to be the Voyager B. That our first instinct was that it would be Enterprise. They were going to be on, just because I think early on, I was like, if we're introducing Star Trek to a new audience, they need to know the Enterprise.
Okay, sure.
Then I think we talked to some people, and a lot of people raised their concerns in the room and also outside of the room. They're like, I don't think it should be the Enterprise. And I remember I was really excited one time. I was telling Kate, I was thinking that it would get her excited. I'm like, what do you think about captaining the Enterprise? And she's like, it better be. She's like, I don't care about that. I only care about the Voyager. And we were like, well, there's our answer right there.
And as always, she's right.
So, yes, and that's where the place where we were wise enough to say we were wrong.
It takes a lot of, it's humbling, but it also takes some wisdom to know when you're not right and admit it. Right on?
That's true. Yeah. So, speaking of legacy characters, the one that was an absolute mind-blowing moment was obviously the reveal of Wesley. And so, do you mind talking a little bit of a background? Was this an idea, again, sort of from get-go when you were breaking down the stories, like, well, we got to bring in a time traveler? Or is that something that just kind of like cropped up and it was sort of a light bulb moment of the original Prodigy? Why don't we do Wesley?
I think very early on, we wanted to have a mysterious character come in, like a mentor to them. And Jen Murrow was one of our writers, and she literally had the Wesley Crusher poster up in her bedroom growing.
And she's friends with Wil.
And she's friends with Wil. But just like, for a while, we were like, Wesley is like the original Prodigy kid in Trek. We're like, of course he needs to, we didn't know how much we would use him, like whether it was just like a one-shot episode.
But he checked all the boxes. He checked everything, and we're like, it just felt like the right fit.
Yeah, he was so cool and so unexplored. We felt like, Next Generation kind of just dropped him, and we're like, what? And then we heard like no one wanted to touch his character because he's this Time Lord now, and it's, well, what are you gonna? He's too powerful, We're like, no, let's bring it. Make him powerful, but strip him of his powers or do things so that he isn't so, snap of the fingers can do anything. And so, there was a fun moment as we were writing the episodes too, where, as architects of the series, where the series is going, but you put yourself in the position of Admiral Janeway and also put yourself in the position of the audience. And we're like, whoever this entity is, right? Maybe they think it's Chakotay talking from the future. And we leaned into it. Right, that's kind of great. You have to how do we hide the fact that it's Wesley Crusher? Like that was our big thing of would people figure out that it's him? And then when the episodes leaked to France, we're like, oh my gosh, we're like, this is totally gonna get out, but luckily it didn't. So
surprisingly,
I am shocked that it didn't, because this was such an incredible thing. And the thing is that it worked. As when I was watching it for the first time, I was absolutely 100% certain that it was Chakotay. And then the moment it clicked, I was like, oh gosh, it's Wesley.
I love it. Yeah, we told marketing to please don't put any imagery of him in the trailers,
Right.
yeah, for us, it was also important because I know a lot of people are like, oh, Prodigy is the Voyager 2.0. And I'm like, I understand there's a lot of connection and connective tissues there, but like Wesley helps show that no, we're not just beholden to Voyager. We can bring anyone in.
Yeah. Yeah, and you brought in legacy characters from all over. And speaking of which, I mean, Wil Wheaton did come back as Wesley during Picard, and these two shows, Prodigy and Picard, were kind of being put together at about the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was this process like of working together and making sure you weren't stepping on each other's toes because you were using a similar character and similar time frame?
I mean, there was a moment when we found out that that Picard was doing it, and you feel that's the moment where we feel like the little brother. We're the little animated show. We're like, whoa, 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 that's like our bread and butter character. And luckily, they were Akiva and Terry were fantastic. We had lots of conversations to get it right, because we all want the whole, the world, the whole canon to make sense. So,
and we were, Dan, just to clarify, we were already down the road. We had read a lot of episodes with Wesley Crusher. And so we're like, oh, you want to use him too? Well, let's please. Yeah, they wanted to talk to us. And we're like, thank you. Let's talk and make it work,
Yeah. And then Walkie really helped out with, I think, writing some of the dialogue for Picard, the words,
that's right,
things like that. Mm-hmm. But again, that was like a couple years before even season 2 aired. So it makes it even feel like more of a tapestry that with the time that
it was a great example of just showing how the shows can work together,
Absolutely, it did. Yes.
It is. It's just beautiful how everything just fit together. So, as we already mentioned, the story arc is incredibly complex. So how difficult was it to actually keep track of all the moving parts, I suppose, whether when you were breaking down the story, when the show actually went into production? Because every time I think the fact that it is involving time travel, it's like that Charlie Day meme when, he's looking madly and pointing at things on the whiteboard. It kind of feels like this because there was just so much going on story-wise. So how difficult was it to kind of keep it all connected and moving? Whether when you were breaking down the story or once the show actually went into production, it's like, don't forget to do this.
I think we had bumpers on where we knew that there would be a younger audience watching. So it was always like, how do we do like Back to the Future, time travel? Whereas very simple in terms of, for Gwen, was very much Marty McFly, phasing out of the photograph, and not going much more into it than that. And then the deeper stuff that we knew the Trek fans would get to, that's when we talked about time shields, things like that, that actually...
the temporal shield
of the Infinity. And what that means, it was just basically just like a tachyon storm. It just kind of says, don't worry about this. They are untethered to that area. But I feel like Star Trek has a lot of like simple answers that kind of is just like, yeah, don't worry about this. There's a scientific mumbo jumbo thing. So that helps too.
Yeah. Well, it throughout the entire season, the language and all the concepts progressively got more and more complicated. I mean, at some point, even the characters kind of stopped really going into a lot of explanations. It was more like, well, this is what's happening. You should be able to gather what it's all about from visual context. But, it's interesting that, is that sort of became a natural progression as you were writing the story? Or did you consciously put in that, like, okay, we're going to be talking about wormholes, but we're not going to be as explanatory as we would have been at the beginning of the season, for example?
I mean, we definitely knew that it was just going to continually get more and more difficult. But, we were always trying to watch that because it could have gotten even worse. We could have written it in a place where you guys all would have checked out after 5 episodes because you're like, this is confusing. They don't even know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? So,
and then it offered also like opportunities where I remember when we're like Chakotay fires off into the wormhole, into unstable wormhole, and we have no idea where he is. And so normally you'd think, well, where is he in the galaxy? I'm like, no. The question is, where is he in time? I'm like, we want to make him grizzled. So why can't he have gone somewhere 10 years earlier? If this is an unstable wormhole, we can put him wherever we want to make him the coolest looking Chakotay with the cowboy hat and the grizzled face. So that was...
Ripped Chakotay too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, though, you did such a great, beautiful job of creating that intricacy of somebody who has no Star Trek knowledge whatsoever can go in from square one and then be technobabbling with the rest of us by the end of watching Prodigy season 2. So, I mean, whether you're conscious of it or not, you did a really good job. I just want you to
You
know.
know what's so funny is when we were first approached to do Star Trek, that's what I was afraid of. I'm like, I don't know how to technobabble. I don't know how to bridge speak. I don't know how to all the military commands and things like that. I'm like, how are we going to do this? I'm like, I know how to get to the moment of like Kirk and Spock, as Spock's about to die,
The emotional
those moments, but I don't, but that's what, it was a great learning experience for us to be able to dive into that stuff. And I still don't think we can bridge speak and technobabble that much.
That's all right.
To the extent that you are fans of Star Trek, do you have a favorite, either a story arc or a twist somewhere in season 2 that like really hit the spot for you as fans of Star Trek?
For us fans,
Mm-hmm.
In season 2.
Or season 1, honestly, if that's where it's placed.
I do love the whale. I love that we're using the whale because I loved stuff before, and then
that was early on. We're an animated show. We can do whatever we want. We're doing cetacean ops.
we're doing cetacean.
We're showing it all.
We can do it, and like let's treat it seriously.
Yes. I love how the animated shows have really taken that and run with it. Both Prodigy and Lower Decks really killing it with cetacean ops. This really weird detail that just came out of the blue one time on TNG is now a full-blown thing.
And it
And
works.
I would say, when doing Westlake Crusher was super exciting because we knew it was going to be a huge twist, a huge secret that no one would know, and he was just such an exciting character to bring back. And I'm such a huge fan of his. Like Stand By Me is like one of my favorite films of all.
Will is one of my favorite people.
Yeah,
He's just such a kind-hearted, wonderful person.
Oh yeah, and he was so excited, like coming in and recording and bringing his character back. And at first he was kind of nervous about it, and then we were working with him, and he was just like, "Oh my god, this is so fun!" Like he just loved,
You do our pizza party.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
he came.
Yes, the pizza party.
Yeah,
And you could tell he was having fun too. I mean, it really comes through in his performance what a good time he's having. So I'm like excited for Wil Wheaton while I'm watching Prodigy at the same time while I'm watching Wesley.
oh, he loved being a little scatterbrained, and he loved doing that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Will is just perfect. To slightly switch the topic now, I had the honor of meeting both of you at Star Trek Las Vegas. So what about the experience of actually interacting with fans now that we're in the age of social media where a lot of the behind the scenes talent, the actors, the creatives, everybody basically kind of gives a sort of access to the fans to ask questions, to reach out and just have discussions. So what's your experience been like, between, I suppose to compare, fans online versus meeting fans at the conventions?
Well, they're sometimes one and the same. It's nice to meet the fans who we know online. And I just feel like all the Trek fans that I've met personally, they've all been fantastic. It's such a loving community that's great to be a part of. I'm very, very proud of the Star Trek community. It feels nice to be a part of something where there's just a lot of good people.
And I love, and I love, like, if you look at what we've done, we do a lot of family entertainment, and, we're known for a lot of like Ninjago, and we have a lot of Ninjago fans, and a lot of times they're little younger kids, and it's super charming and wonderful and great. But it's it's rewarding to find adults who like Prodigy, who understand what we're doing, that we're not writing just some simple cartoon. And it means a lot because we do work so hard, and I feel like we're trying to elevate animation and to bring it to adults, not just for kids. And so it's very, very rewarding to meet these fans who are adults and who love it, or who get just as equally emotionally moved as I do when I watch.
It's kind of like you could reduce it down to like we're playing make-believe on a playground, and then some kids go, "Oh, I like that make-believe. I want to play too." It's just like that's the way we view Prodigy fans.
Yeah, it's inclusive for everybody. You don't have to be a fan going in, but you can become one. You can be a longtime fan. And it's fun. Whole families can watch this show. You can watch it on your own. You can be a kid. You can be an adult. It doesn't really matter. It's accessible to everybody.
That is part of our favorite is seeing the Star Trek fans who hate New Trek and who are very negative and very jaded and cynical about Trek. And then they're like, why am I crying at this cartoon that I'm watching now? I actually like Star Trek Prodigy. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, I always thought, like, this is Trek. This is Trek.
Right.
Yeah, and then they go, this is Trek. All right.
Yeah, I've seen that countless times. People actually giving Prodigy a chance, take back every nasty thing they said before they watched it. Like, oh, you know what? This is pretty good. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Well, you mentioned something a moment ago, Kevin, about you both have children, right?
Yeah.
And how has parenthood had an impact on your professional lives? Since, I mean, you arguably, we were just saying how Prodigy's for everybody, but you primarily work with got content toward kids. So how does that impact your professional life?
I mean, having kids, I don't know if it's really impacted, because I think Kevin and I still view ourselves as older kids. So we have this playful mentality, but we're also, the stuff we're writing, we're never writing it for kids. We're writing it for the kid in ourselves. We're writing it for ourselves first and foremost. Because if we don't want to watch it, why would anyone else want to watch it? And I think that's at least our rule of thumb to make something good. Because if you're making something for somebody else and you don't know if it's any good, it'll never be good. There'll be no soul to it.
So really, your inner child is your North Star.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone's got an inner child. Like, you watch Finding Nemo and you're like, this is a beautiful movie that doesn't, there's great content, doesn't need to have a rating on it. If you just tell an earnest story, I don't know. I'm a big fan of animation, and I don't view it as something that's for an audience. I think that's the best way to put it, for a younger audience.
Yeah, I always feel, just having kids now, I even get more emotional at watching films and TV, and that's I'm in the circumstance where my kids, who are now 13 and 11, almost everything I do, they like, but they never you know what I mean? They're always
sure.
Okay, what, I'm like,
whatever.
yeah, exactly.
They're teenagers.
Yeah, come on. Yeah. Or even when they were younger, even with Ninjago, they're like, yeah, that's okay, that's cool. And then they're on to the next. I'm like, no.
So they don't particularly care too much. There's that's what Dad does for work. It's not a big deal.
The only thing
stories. Hold on, Kevin. One of my favorite stories was my daughter. This was years ago when we were working in Ninjago, and my daughter was very proud. She's telling some boy, she's like, "My father writes Ninjago," and then this boy, without missing a beat, goes, "My dad writes for Star Wars." That's one
of those only in LA stories.
That's just the way kids act. They're like, "I don't care, man."
That's fantastic. Well, we do have a couple of questions that we have built up from previous episodes that we would like to ask you, see if we can get something on the official record. The first and the most commonly asked one probably being about melanoid slimeworm anatomy. Can you elaborate at all about how Murph works? Just because he's kind of like, I don't know, Gumby, but he can also be in space and a mermaid.
Yeah.
Yes, he can do all of that. And also, how many stages of development do melanoid slimeworms have? Just because we've seen 2, I have to assume there's got to be more, right? Like, if Murph ever goes back...
Seasons. There's only 2 seasons so far.
Yeah, there must be more. I mean, we when we first were creating Murph, we thought of Murph as it starts off like an amoeba. You know what I mean? As a single cell organism almost, and it continues to advance and get smarter or more complex.
I think we had an image in our writer's room of a very dapper, slender Jello man with a fedora, and a cigarette or something like that. There was and that was the inspiration, I think, for the Murph singing, the Murph two shoes or no shoes.
Yes, that's exactly what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
If you know,
and working with D. Bradley Baker, voicing Murph, if you look at season 1 and season 2, there is an evolution of his language. Like at first, it's really just a bunch of, sounds. And then he actually starts to verbalize things a little bit, almost like a, newborn or not as a born, but a little
Infant?
Toddler.
infant. Thank you.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Love that.
We did mention Jillian, the whale. And I think there was a question again asked, and we actually wondered ourselves, like, if she was an actual officer, and if she were, what was the rank? But in this case, like, I did manage to get an answer from Aaron. So he mentioned that, like, the rank is never mentioned, never implied or anything else. So perhaps, and I quote, perhaps she was an NCO specialist like O'Brien. And I love this so much because, O'Brien had to do things on the fly, and we have an actual whale, swimming around, figuring out navigation on the fly. It's a great thing. But thank you for mentioning Admiral Janeway, because this is something that has been slightly bugging me ever since I finished the multiple rewatches. Admiral Janeway, fantastic. An incredible role model. She's the leader, the protector, to a certain degree, a rule breaker. So basically somebody who's needed by Starfleet and Federation. And she's trying to retire, and yet she's basically in a position where she's seemingly locked into an eternal state of duty, especially by the end of the series when she's called back. So do you have any thoughts on that? Because it did slightly remind me of a situation with Kirk, where he was never really been able to stop being a Starfleet officer, whether a captain or an admiral. So are we looking in, Admiral Janeway basically being in the same mold in that regard?
I mean, I think we always have to put ourselves in her shoes and being like, she looks forward so much to the day she can retire. But I'm like, can she ever retire? Can she truly walk away from the job when the duty calls? And especially on something like at the end of season 2, it's like we feel like she would be like, I got to go back, but yeah, you're right in the sense of, does she ever get her moment where she can relax? And sadly,
she even says something like that. It's just like, isn't it too much to hope that basically I get a break? And she really doesn't, and I feel really bad for her at the end.
yeah.
But you can't let her retire. There'd be no more Star Trek then. The Navy is let her captain retire. There's no show.
I mean, technically speaking, I suppose we know that she doesn't, because she's mentioned how many times in season 3, should we talk to Admiral Janeway? So I'm like, yeah, she's still the mover and the shaker. She's never.
I'm just laughing at at the end of the movie, James Bond retires. No more James Bond movies. What? I'd be like, what? You can't retire James Bond.
They had to kill him in the last one.
Yeah.
No, but it made me think. I was listening to your podcast too, and I thought and Char, you were talking about the scene you really liked was the Chakotay on the island, the montage.
Yes.
What I like about that moment is that he's sort of at peace. Like, he knows he made a decision. Like, if you have to make a decision, I'm going to maroon myself on a planet forever. That's got to be a hard pill to swallow. I mean, that's got to be scary. But at some point, he's found his routine and he's found a certain peace, which I don't know, just going back to, I can't imagine of like going through that and finding your peace. And then these stupid kids come and be like, we need you back,
Right. Just when he's accepted it, and this is his
We friend.
retirement. Yeah.
Yeah. The angry warrior found some peace with the situation at hand. And then our kids have to just shake it all up.
Yeah.
Love that. Well, speaking of folks who maybe aren't as much at peace, Marina, you brought up a great thing about Dr. Noam, because we've often wondered, okay, is he a medical doctor? Is he the counselor? Is he a mixture of both? Can you clarify for us, please?
He is a medical doctor, but then when we brought we had no idea we're bringing in the doctor for season 2. And so we always talked about, I think I always liked the idea of Dr. Noam as a little bit like Bones, of like a guy who's got a horrible bedside manner, tells squarely, you're going to die, whatever it is.
Oh, yeah, the end is, it's the end or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why we shifted to, I think someone in the room said, probably Walk. He's like, well, why don't we make him a counselor? Like, we're like,
Yeah, because we couldn't have two doctors.
Yeah.
working.
Yeah. No, but for a moment it kind of threw us because all of a sudden it's like, yeah, and stop by for a counseling session. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Wasn't he just like fixing bones and things in season 1 and all of a sudden he's counseling people?
Well, and we could have like just not had him around for season 2, but we love Jason Alexander and we love Sure, and I wanted to get to know these characters more.
Yeah, I wish we could have gotten to know him a little more because, I mean, really, he got to do his resort program and he hung out in sickbay a little bit, fixed some bones, and that was about all we got.
this kind of
some great one-liners.
is like the self-preservation. I love his like,
Yes, that for sure. Yeah, looking out for number 1.
I think my kids were like, did he really do that?
Yeah. So before we move in, I suppose it's a kind of a quick question and it's sort of in vein with what we asked before, but there are a lot of very deep cuts, like the sudden connections to previous productions and random characters. Do you have a favorite one? So, something like, well, Wil was a great one. It's not exactly a deep cut, but something that popped up and it's a connection to whichever one of the series, Deep Space Nine or TNG, that really tickled you.
I think I mean, only, I don't know. Walkie and a lot of the writers came up with some great ones. I can only take credit for Melanoid Slime Worm because I did that was my only contribution of deep cuts.
That's a deep cut, though.
I think I searched
Yeah, it is.
slimy worm Star Trek, and then this one reference. I remember going up to Walkie. I'm like, can it be a Melanoid Slime Worm? And he's like, let me think about that. Yes.
I always like any references that do nod back to a TOS. So I love when Crusher whisks them away in the ziggurat when the creatures are coming and they're in the office, the 19 sort of late 60s office. Yeah, right. So I love that. And I also love, we don't go into it, but I love Mijel. First of all, her name, but also her hair and the white accents, and those are sort of nods to T-Pole, and some great, wait, T-Pole, right?
T'Pol, right?
T'Pol, is it T'Pol? From
Yeah, I think some people jokingly call her T-Paul, like that's her rap name.
T'Pol, okay. the Vulcan head mistress, whatever she was.
Oh, okay. Not T'Pol on Enterprise, but
No.
okay, sorry about
Talking about TOS, there's an early episode where they go down to the Vulcan planet. I think it's the episode where Spock has to battle Kirk.
Yeah, that's about time, right?
Yeah.
This is Steve is our Star Trek more.
What's her name?
Oh, the names of our own episodes. So
Yeah, you know what? That's a lot to keep track of on its own. Plus, I mean, you've got other things going on.
I have so much bandwidth. It's those details.
Except for a tribble called Quest.
Hey, great episode title. Love that. There were some really good ones in season 2. That and the Fast and the Curious. Yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we should probably turn the corner to where we're looking ahead rather than looking behind in our portion of the interview here. And so I just got to ask, are you down if Netflix calls and orders a 3rd season of Prodigy?
Yes, of course. Of course.
That's a silly question. Just checking.
Of course.
Yeah. Some time has passed.
And I would say the whole team's ready to go. I mean, I think we had a great experience with our team, and everyone's very committed to the show. I mean, there might be some scheduling conflicts and stuff like that, but I think the desire is there for everyone to work on it.
To be somehow involved, you know what I mean? If someone, even if there's someone like Ben Ebon who, let's say he's on another show, well, maybe he might be able to advise and help out to help keep the look going, or so that it's definitely our hope.
That's wonderful to hear. So hypothetically speaking, do you already have thoughts and ideas possibly, as far as what might happen next?
We have as much as we did for season 2 at the very beginning of oh, it's a time travel season. This is going to be difficult. But it always starts that way. You know, it's like, we're like, oh, they're out in the open. They're out in the Delta Quadrant again. Now what? So we have the start, you know, then it's just about going into the room and going, what can we do? What would be awesome? What would make,
There's a lot.
how do we top ourselves? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bars high.
Yeah, we have a file of ideas of, you know, there's episode ideas that we wanted to do in season 2, but we just couldn't fit it in. Concepts that we thought were great, you know, characters, you know, OG characters that we would love to have somehow, you know, come back in our show. So, you know, yeah.
Naturally. Yeah. Well, and you did such a great job of closing the door on season 2, just in case this ends up being it. It's a complete story. You've told it, but there's a whole other door just waiting to be kicked open for season 3 and a whole new world of adventures. Well, universe, I should say.
I'm hoping, you know, with all the different things happening with Paramount and Skydance and all the, I don't know what, you know, I'm hoping these new people who come in, I hope they look fondly on our show, and, you know, I hope.
Yeah, I hope they understand what a gem they have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something I was curious about, Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds kind of provided a wonderful proof of concept, you know, with the crossover between animated and live action characters. So what do you think as a live action prodigy? You know, like, is that something that potentially might happen, or is it too much of a headache to consider, you know, having an actual gal running around?
I would love that. And honestly, what gives me hope is, you know, it was recently in the trades, but Dan and I are writing a live action Ninjago movie right now with human actors and stuff. And like, that was always in the back of our heads when we were writing Ninjago. Even though they're little minifigs, we imagined them as real characters in a real world and all this stuff. And imagine if it was live action. So now we can get that chance. So I'm hoping, I don't know when, but maybe down the line there might be a chance for that.
That would be cool. Yeah. So speaking of that project, you just started going into development about that, right? Is there anything that you can tell us at all?
We can't say.
You can't say anything. Okay. All good. We could probably just cut that out.
No. But what we went to them with was a way to do a Ninjago movie that I think Ninjago fans are going to absolutely love and devour. Yet the movie can work on a whole nother level for anyone who doesn't know Lego, doesn't know Ninjago. You would see that trailer and you go, that's a great time. I want to buy a movie ticket.
Yeah. Wow. So again, you're taking folks who have both the knowledge as well as none at all, making it accessible and saying, hey, here's a fun thing, come play. Just like you really have to do that. When you look at, you know, if you're going to do a movie, you can't do a movie just for a certain subgroup. You has to play to a massive audience. So you got to find ways to do that. Be clever. Yeah.
So as a sort of a wrap-up question, I suppose, because thank you so much. We've had you for so long. I recall a somewhat older interview in which you mentioned that your original aspirations professionally were to do film music for Dan and to direct for Kevin. So is any of that original desire still there, or has the writing, producing 100% took over any other creative impulses?
I think it's gone. For me, it's not there anymore. It's interesting because it's like, back when I wanted to do music, I didn't know I was a writer per se. I didn't know I could have that. But I don't think I wanted to be a writer at that time. I don't think Kevin and I ever wanted to be a writer. We just wanted to be telling stories and being in the entertainment business. And it wasn't until we actually started doing it that we learned we're not that bad at it, you know. I think so. It's like we discovered something new. It's very much like Dal thinking he's going to be a captain, and all of a sudden he's like, you know what? I actually work a bit better as a number one. And I think it's like the same thing too with, like, I don't think we ever had any aspirations to work in animation, and yet here we are working in animation and loving it. So I think, you know, I think our advice to people trying to make it in whatever they are is don't be so rigid. Like, open up the possibilities and just kind of go towards the star, but it may be a different star that you end up on.
Well, that kind of ties into what was going to be my last question of the interview, which is, I mean, the best part of our show is the messages we get from cadet listeners who tell us what they like about each episode and what they learn. Is there anything you'd like to say to the younger viewers out there? Whether it's wisdom in life or Prodigy, something or another, anything.
I hope children can watch a show like this and believe in the human race and believe in us and believe in humanity and believe that there are great people out there attempting to do great, wonderful, honorable things, and that we're looking and lifting each other up, you know, because sometimes when we look out in the real world, we don't see examples of that.
I'd also add for them not to be hard on themselves when they make mistakes, because I feel like they should need to be like Rock Talk. Yeah. You need to learn that, you know, this is just a hiccup and it helps set you on another course. And that's really, you're going to get a lot of that in life.
Lots of problemtunities out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautifully said, both of you. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. Where can people find you if they would like to see what you're up to online and keep up with what you're doing?
I guess we're on Twitter for the time being. We're also on.
We're slowly migrating over. You know, instead of Brothers Hageman on Twitter, right? That's our handle, or Brothers Hageman Blue Sky.
Okay. Yeah, all the Trek Twitter folks have migrated over, so we look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, we're starting a presence, so yeah.
Good. Glad to hear it. And we look forward to whatever you're up to next.
Yeah,
thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for giving our show attention and shining a light on it. It's people like you that you're getting us fans each and every day, and we really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the beautiful work of art that we got to dissect for 20 weeks together. We were just working with what we were given, and it was wonderful. So Thank you back. And that's something I love about Prodigy in general is the folks who make it are wonderful. You're all so easy to talk to and accessible and so much fun. And you created some of the best Star Trek out there.
Oh. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I know. Thank you so much. It means everything. Thank you.
Hey, feelings mutual. Thank you, guys. With that, Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Production and technical direction by Earl Green. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is at missionlogpodcast.com. And if you'd like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog. Until next time, everybody, live logs and proper and go fast.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.